What's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is family. I told him I'm gonna start distinguishing family between special guests. I always say special guests, but family is when I know that the person's heart is pure. Not saying nobody else that's a special guest who part isn't pure. That mean I had intimate interactions and I seen like no, the dedication is there to the craft and their work, and I can personally vouch for them. So I would like to introduce to you. We call him D Reed, but it's Doug Reed. He got a bunch of aliases that he go by that anybody know him, whatever path. And we're gonna get a little bit of that journey today. But I introduce to you Mr. Doug Reed.
Hey, what's up, family? I mean, like you said, it's just like family, man, like my little brother. But hey, what's up, world? I mean, I'm here as an open book on just believing in what Reg is doing, man. So, uh, just to express some thoughts and give my point of view.
I appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time coming. I same thing I told Taz when I interviewed her is I bring it over here with you with D Reed is like we've been working so closely for about a year, and I'm like I don't know D Reed's story before Black Man Hill, and so
Phew.
we work together with for Black Man Hill.
Hmm.
And we do operate a virtual free space every Sunday at 7 p.m. for called King's Corner where men come and share their thoughts, feelings, and we have a bond, fellowship, and brotherhood. But before BMH, and I told Taz the same thing, like, hey, I don't want to. I'm not. We not here to talk BMH today. We talking life before it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what all I know for sure is Cincy boy that
Hmm.
was in the military,
Hmm.
uh worked with the it's a whole story. So let's start. Where do you want to start from? What's the
Well,
most impactful to BMH, I guess, that comes to mind?
I always like to tell people I'm from Cincinnati. Being from a area we call Wanted Hills.
Mm,
Considered a hood, but what being from the hood allows me. You heard me say it in military terms to adjust and adapt and
mm,
overcome any situation. Just being from that environment. A young father at 17 years old,
mm,
joined the military at age 20 after, going to college and finding out that college just wasn't it for me, just wasn't enough money to bring in as far as what
mm,
I wanted at that particular time. So I went into a more strict environment, being in the military, more disciplined environment, and actually loved it. I learned leadership being in the military. My first duty station was in Frankfurt, Germany. You got to imagine, 20-year-old kid. I say kid, being in a foreign country. And, you go catch a cab and it's a Mercedes Benz. You know
mm,
what I mean?
mm,
Um, spent time in military. I was actually involved in a bombing in November 1985, where my ex-wife at the time, we was at, I'll say the store at a plaza, and a bomb went off at a car wash where I was getting ready to actually go get my car wash.
oh
But she
wow.
wanted to go to the store, and the bomb goes off. I look outside and you see the car bombs. Nobody was actually killed, but a lot of people were injured uh, during that particular time, and that could have been me.
Right.
Had some great times over there though. Party. I had to had to phrase something like Prince. Party like it was 1999. So we did a lot of drinking, but had great times over there, man. But that was an experience, man. Just being in a foreign country and making that adjustment. But yet again, learning leadership. The
Mm,
factors, the techniques, the characteristics of what it meant to be a leader. One of my highest achievement, I went to a promotion board. One of my highest achievements in life that I look at, out of that promotion board, you score, the maximum score was 200. I scored a 199.8,
hey.
and that was a high achievement. But, military, and then from there, actually worked in, got out of the military in what, 19, transferred here on the East Coast, um, in 1987.
Nah, that's good. I had the young king came in here to distract me. But
Yeah.
so military, I know one of the things that we talked about too was that um fighting for your community and fighting for your country at the same time. And can you talk about that inside effect of that and how it could, play with you mentally trying to do both?
You know what? I'm gonna go back a little bit, and that's really kind of based on even what's happened yesterday, as we all know, as far as the Capitol being, people rushing the Capitol. But I go back to it because now I'm looking at how people's minds were actually believing that something that was and it wasn't. So in the military, when you're in basic training, they play with your mind. They make it's actually your brainwash. Quite simple in that particular environment in that training. Thus, what happened to the people that out here? You get brainwashed. But the thing about it is, as you become involved in the military, or you understand that type of lifestyle. You make that commitment. To
Mm,
defend the country. The Constitution of the country. You take an oath,
mm,
and you believe in that oath. And then when you see things that happen in regards to how we are treated as Black men and women, um, and then you see what happened yesterday, makes you question why.
mm,
Why did I make that commitment to something that didn't believe in me? We can take that back to the soldiers of the Vietnam War who actually
mm,
fought for Vietnam and they came home were treated differently. Or guys that fought in the Civil War, they came out, and they still wanted them to be slaves. So, this has been going on for years. And as Black men or men of color, we go through that transition. But the amazing thing about us, we're always able, and I say it again, we adapt, we adjust, we overcome any situation that we deal with. So it is a feeling, but I can say I respect my country. I can't say I love my country like I did once before. I respect my country, but
mm.
knowing what has transpired now makes me more of an advocate as far as what I do with Black Men Heal, what I do with criminal justice reform, just gives me, you know, more motivation to do what we do.
Yeah, and you talk about prison reform and things and changes within these systems that's in place. I know you had some time, like, could you explain your experience working within the systems and with some of the things you saw, some of the things you was able to help with, and some things you want to do moving forward to, help with the system?
Wow, I'm thinking about this because it all ties in.
Mm,
Being and you're saying it, I was always in the system. I mean, thank God I wasn't a victim of the system.
mm,
But then again, working in prison, I was somewhat a victim of the system. One
mm,
reason being because when I came in was at the height of the crack law.
mm,
I came in 1992. The height of the crack law was basically 1987. So when I get out, I get out of the military trying to, as we go back to what Wayne said, I was trying to make a living.
mm,
And actually trying to make a living during that particular time means that, um, the corrections were looking for a lot of ex-military people like that. So that uh, made that transition smooth and easier for me because it's supposed to be a paramilitary structure. But I was so involved in trying to make a living, and then working in that kind of environment, there's always that overtime, there's always that money. So you're not really concerned with what is going on or why people are there. Only thing I'm trying to do is make that check. I'm trying to get that dough. You know what I
mm,
mean? I'm trying to get those hours. I'm trying to get those fat checks. And guys, and I was basically kind of cold because what happens is, guys will try to tell you a story. CO this, like my man. Look, I don't know why you here. I didn't put you here. Only thing I'm trying to do is basically get paid, and that was real.
mm,
But then when you go through that system, and I worked in that system for over 25 years, there's always significant events that happen within that system.
mm,
I remember that back in 1995. Now, I'm starting to get an understanding of what's going on in 1995, where they actually, the crack law went back up because there was a big disparity of, you know, regular cocaine and crack cocaine was 100 to 1. So it went back up. And I remember, they called us to another institution, just like, they thought it was going to be a big riot.
Mm.
And I remember working in that environment. And of course, working in a correctional environment or law enforcement environment, we talk about, you know, uh, how attitudes and how people feel, white versus black. I worked around a lot of white officers that they felt a certain power over they didn't say it, but they felt a certain power over just being over a black person.
Mm.
And what I was talking to a guy today. What we did was we protected our space against that kind of stuff. Even though they felt that way, they would never invade my space, and I
Mm.
protected my space. But then when you go through that system and you understand now, you learn more about the system and why you're there, that the disparities, and now we locking up so many black people, and you're seeing it. And I actually worked in uh, where the buses were coming in and out. I was the one that would take you off the bus, tell you to undress, tell you to open your mouth, tell you to pull your ears, tell you to lift your arms, tell you to turn around, tell you to lift your genitals, tell you to turn around, bend over, spread your cheeks, and take a look inside. That's the now you're talking about a violation,
Mm.
especially for a man. But those
Mm.
are the things. But now when you are working in an environment, and I'm noticing all these buses that people are coming in are always buses of men of color or brown people. We
Mm.
call brown as far as, but it's not that many white boys.
Mm.
It's not that many Caucasians. Like, yo, this is wild. Like, are we the only ones getting locked up?
Right.
So, it started to dawn on you. And now, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't listening to those guys because I was there for a job. And
Mm.
then when I started listening to those guys, when they started to actually started to tell their stories on why they was there, that they only had 5 grams of coke, but yet they got 5 years, or they started talking about the mandatory minimums based on, it's like, yo, this is a crazy system. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, this is wild. And I remember wanting to be a counselor to actually be able to assist in their progress. But other things happened. I got into working into business administration, to doing contracts. But it plays out on you. And I remember one of the things that I remember one guy that really struck me. I can't say his name, but they had got him for a kingpin charge.
Mm.
Young brother, I think he was out of Baltimore or something like that.
Mm.
And looking at his story, I'll just say it briefly, but they gave him 30 years.
Mm.
No bodies,
Mm.
but it was based on conspiracy and based on Wade and all that, but no bodies.
Mm.
And the kid had to be about 27, 20 years old. And I'm like, 30 years? And they ain't catch you with nothing?
Right.
So now mentally that does start to play on you,
Mm.
because you're starting to see all your people and you start to wonder why. And I knew after, of course, time goes forward, but I knew after I retired out of the system, and I did a few things even while I was working as a CO. I actually was something that you don't know. I was a vice president of a nonprofit organization called Partnership for Youth,
I
which
didn't
is
know that.
which is actually it was based out of Camden, New Jersey. I don't even know if I got the picture, um, but we took kids up to Fort Dix out of Camden. We took 600 kids a year. We did it 3 times a year. We took 200 kids a while. But we had drill sergeants, we had police officers, we had other people in the community. We took them up there to take them out of a city environment and put them in a more structured environment. And we made an impact. And we did it for roughly like 10 years. And we made a major impact. But that was my way of giving back. But even once I got finished with my tenure within the Bureau of Prisons, I knew I wanted to do something. And I started my own nonprofit called Synergy Reform. And that was
Mm.
basically, Synergy Reform was taking a collaboration of people that had been incarcerated, people that had worked inside, and to come out and educate the public.
Mm.
Uh, but COVID kind of slowed some things up, But then I got involved. I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, Rich, because
You this is your space. You could
but and I tell you about synergy reform. What happened? I made that commitment that I was going to uh, start this organization. Didn't know what, how, when, or where. I am definitely one that will actually step out on faith, and I don't like asking people for nothing. Of course, that's actually changed now because of people that I come in contact with, like yourself. So I had a friend of mine. I call him a friend because he was a guy that worked for me that had did 18 years in federal prison. And when I went to see my son, well, I spoke about when I was 17 years old, I had a young son, but I went to see him out in LA. And when I went to see him out in LA, this particular guy had just got into ministry and was working as a assistant pastor at a church. So I got an opportunity to see him, and he did his thing. He's doing quite well even now. Um, so we kind of maintain contact, always pushing something positive. And I remember there's a guy named Lewis Reed. Lewis Reed actually works with Cut 50 and Dream Corps. Um, I think he did 13, 14 years or whatever, but um, this was during the time of Meek Mill, when Meek Mill was going through that transition, and they were down in Philly. And when they were down in Philly, what happened was uh, the guy that I knew that was out in LA told me to reach out to him and say, hey, you may want to get with him. He's doing some things or whatever. So I reached out to him. Long story short, next thing I know, I'm on a conference call with Van Jones, was doing the Redemption Project during that time. And they actually had invited people up to Van Jones was speaking up at NYU. Same thing. I said, well, let me just go up here and check it out and
right.
see what it's about. I do want to get involved, and I respect Van Jones for what he does and for the man that he is. So I go up there, and I get up there early. I'm fascinated because I've never been to NYU. Small campus, nothing to brag about, but for me, it was a kid from Cincinnati, Ohio. See, that country came out, Ohio. But so I'm kind of amazed at just being on the campus. Van Jones spoke, but there was another lady that spoke, older white lady, redhead lady. And Van Jones told her, say, introduce yourself. And she introduced herself, and she made the statement. She said, well, I was a serial killer. I was like, yo, wow, that's deep. Like, old lady is a serial killer.
Right.
And she said, yeah, Frosted Flakes, Cheerios, and so she, she she made a joke, and I was like, you know what? I like her.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, I like her. So after it was all over, you had the opportunity to talk to Van Jones. So I go up and talk to her, and kind of find out she went to prison in Arizona, a white collar crime she had committed with her and her husband. And she was doing a thing called, well, I asked her, hey, I got this nonprofit organization I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Uh, I see you got your own thing. She had a thing called Reinventing Reentry. And she, she called me Douglas. She called me her son. She said, Douglas, well, I'll call you every Friday. We can talk every Friday, and I'll tell you what I know, and we'll take it from there. So about a month go by, I call her every Friday like clockwork, 11 o'clock my time, I think 8 o'clock their time, because she was in Arizona. So she made this statement. She said, well, if you really want to see what I do, you can come out here to Arizona. Well, lady, I ain't never been to Arizona in my life. You understand what I'm saying, really? Like, I've never been to Arizona, and I was like, and then the cost of tickets to get to Arizona. Like, Arizona ain't just right up the street.
Right.
But I discussed it with my wife, and she said, if that's what you really want to do, go out there. And me, stepped out on faith, and I went out there.
Right.
When I went out there, we did a prison simulation, but we did it for the state of Arizona public defenders. It was probably for like 100, 150 public defenders. But what a prison simulation is, what they do is they put you in a room, Um, and they set all these stations up. You go to these different stations. You're given a bus pass. You're given a sheet to say what kind of character you are or person that you are. You know, you did 5 years in jail. You don't have a driver's license. You go to these different places, like simulating that when you get out of jail, you have to catch a bus to go see the parole officer. You got to catch the bus to go get your license. And what it did was it showed what happens when people go to visit those site places, the push that they get, or the fact that people don't want to help them because they're
Deal
incarcerated.
with them.
Yeah, so it was very impactful. So after I did that, next thing I know, I get another call, um, and we're at Columbia University doing a prison simulation. I
Oh
get another
wow.
call. We're doing a thing down in Philadelphia with the CPAC, which was a conservative, the Republican Party, but we're doing it for the whole party, for them to have an understanding down in Philly at Second and Chestnut at the American History Museum. You
Mm.
know, and I'm a panelist on a panel.
Right. Right.
I'm like, yo, this is crazy. The next thing I know, like our last thing that we did was out in Tennessee, right when
Mm.
in Nashville, Tennessee, there was two things that happened. There was COVID. No, the tornado hit in Nashville, then COVID hit. But we did the simulation for the legislators of Tennessee. So that was what I was doing. And then next thing I know, I get a call from a friend, uh, Tank, and he's like, "Yo, man, I think you should, look at Black Men Hill being on the board." And I was like, "Well, bro, I could be on that board, but you know." And I end up talking to Taz, and she's like, "Well, we really don't have any positions." Tank told us. I was like, "Look, Taz, I know, but for real, I'm trying to get to therapy. I ain't worried about the board thing." You know what I mean?
But
And of
before we
course,
get into the BMH, because I told you it's before BMH, you talked about
oh
being
yeah, 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 definitely.
a young father and avoiding being in the system, like avoiding those pitfalls. I guess you could say, fortunate enough, which it shouldn't be a fortunate enough, but I was fortunate enough to navigate the, jail system and things like that and not have to be in it. But I have many best friends and brothers. My brother just came home last year in April. It'll be a year soon. But
Hmm.
he had just came home and I'm like, man, we never really did too much, but it can catch up to you. So at 17, becoming a young father, how was you able to navigate young adult fatherhood?
I couldn't.
Mm,
uh, Real talk, man. My mother helped me through that whole process. Um, and I got older brothers, and what happens within our families is they were young fathers.
mm,
Young fathers, and my sisters were young mothers.
mm,
So without her, I don't know. And and that was the reason why I actually joined the service.
mm,
It's too much.
mm,
I couldn't handle it. Actually, there was so much. Of course, me and the mother didn't get along, so there was a lot of things that was going on, and I was like, "Yo, I got to get away from this before I do something that I don't want to do, or
mm,
before, you know what I mean."
mm,
And being so I say from 17 to 20, I was going through those ups and those downs.
mm.
You know what I mean? And honestly, the military was, I knew, was a way of escape,
Okay.
a way of getting out of a situation, but yet transferring out of that situation to make a better situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, and if you don't feel comfortable speaking about it, I know we talked about it on King's Corner where I guess that was just the oldest son. He popped
Hmm.
into one of them. And you was
Hmm.
like, I'm still like rebuilding and repairing that relationship from that. Was that the same 17-year-old when you had the 17-year-old?
No, that was the one. That wasn't him.
Okay.
But the amazing thing that happened out of that was he did contact me in
Mm,
reference to one of his buddies that was going through some issues. And of
okay.
course, I referred him to King's Corner. Whether he, I don't think the guy made it to King's Corner,
Okay.
but what it did for me was that he seen the work that I
You
did
was
and
doing.
trusted me enough. Just say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, Dad, can y'all help this guy?
Yeah.
That was strong.
I was telling you like one of them where I had my dad come on and me and him repairing our relationship and having those conversations as well. I think that's like a cycle, I guess, like you said, where I was a young father and now when I grow older, I understand that my dad was just a child who had a child. And it wasn't I don't take it like I don't agree with all the actions, but I don't take it as personal, like he meant to
Hmm.
do it. You know what I mean? I take it more of a that's a young kid. Like I understand being a young kid too.
Yeah, yeah.
Eh,
It,
Go ahead.
no, I would say and it's a lot of pressure
Mm,
for a young teenager to carry that kind of stuff. You think initially that you are
mm,
because yo, I'm having a son. I mean,
right.
yo, that's what life tells you. You're having a son, so I got a boy.
Hmm.
You're not ready for that. I mean, I can say I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, I was 19 going into being 20, so I wasn't, ready at all my damn self.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it helped me reach out to him because I'm like, well, why wasn't he there? What was going on? What happened? All these different questions and answerings. And then when you look at um your relationships at 17, 16, they wasn't serious relationship.
No, sir.
And so if something spawned out of there, then you know that it couldn't be intentional because their relationship wasn't like too much
Yeah,
intentional. But
yeah.
that's another story for another day. The system of the prison system, and you talked about it with like Van Jones and your work with doing reform, synergy reform. And what do you think are some of the next steps? We know Meek Mill has publicized with his work that he's doing, and he's shed a lot of light on it. But what do you think some of those intricate things that people don't, see from a day to day, what's going on and how it could be changed or helped?
I mean, one of the biggest things that I think needs to happen, and I think it's actually on. I did see um, the Vice President elect Kamala Harris's um, guidelines on criminal justice and what she wants to do. One has to be now. I talked about the crack law. The crack law went from 100 to 1. Yeah, 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. Actually, that was under President Obama. He passed that where it actually did go from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. But that's still a big disparity.
Mhm.
So those guidelines
Can you
around
explain that?
that.
Because I don't know what that means. 100 to 1 or 18 to what does that mean?
So basically, it was based on, well, I guess a good way in putting it, like the time that people were getting, if you take 100 pennies versus 1 penny, you know what
Mm,
I mean? So now when the disparity was you was getting 100 years versus 1 year, that's not quite it. I mean,
mm,
because but so those were the difference. Now you got something that uh, cocaine that is a raw entity of what it is. Those guidelines of what we're charging people, which should be equal.
mm-hmm.
That if you got crack and I got coke, it shouldn't be a thing that you get
Okay.
less time
Okay.
because you get coke and I get more time because I get crack. That
Okay.
was made. That was made for us. So that's why I say the disparity. So the disparity, the federal sentencing guidelines have to be equal towards that. One thing that Meek Mill is doing, the probation has to be changed, and that's changing. And the states are actually changing. But I think just like anything else, when you start with the federal guidelines and you start breaking them down to the states, then it carries forward. Even reference to what's going on with police officers.
Mm,
Things like that has got to change. The fact that you got cops that can actually have some disciplinary action can transfer to different states or whatever, and their disciplinary action really doesn't follow them.
mm,
Um, you got district attorneys that we kind of find out that are based on their roots, that they're not treating us equally versus our white counterparts, or think I ain't gonna say white counterparts, but you know uh, guys that are been black and white. You know what you're trying to give a young black man is not the same that with the same crime that you were trying to charge the young white man,
Mm-hmm.
the young white boy. So there are differences. So those things have to come to light. Um, and just I just seen it in New Jersey where they're changing you know minor traffic offenses,
Mm-hmm.
where or based on certain laws, they taking your license. So now you're in trouble. And first thing they want to do is revoke your license. Like, I, but I'm trying to do this, but you won't give me my license
Right.
to get to work. So those laws like that are changing. The bails, the probation, the reentry. One time we talked about prison being rehabilitation. It's not.
Mm,
It's a holding spot. It's a time to, where guys are actually taking out an environment for an average, let's say an average of 10 years, and nothing is being done. He's not doing anything. The system is not going to do anything for him. He definitely has to actually, and we know so many leaders that went through a system and came out to be great leaders. But
mm-hmm.
the thing is, the system is not geared toward trying to bring, have them come back out to society to be a productive citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned, but because I haven't been in the system, but I learned how it affects our brothers is a lot is, and it you hear it, but it don't make sense until you see it close to you. So when they say like you don't hire felons or you don't rent to felons
Hmm.
or you don't do X, Y, and Z for felons, it's like, well, how are these people supposed to live if and exist if all of these rules and implications is in the way of them and basic needs of survival?
Right. And a felon can't get public housing. No, he can't. I met a guy, actually, one of the guys, white guy that was out in Nashville, uh, millionaire. He said, I can't rent an apartment. How do he put it? He said, I can't rent an apartment, but I can own it, because there's certain restrictions when you rent to somebody and they're felon their record, and so
Mm-hmm.
now you go through all that. But he can own it, he can buy it because of the
Mm-hmm.
money. You know what I mean? So there's so much when somebody comes out of a system, the doors actually close already before they even get to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the type of things that um, we got to look at. There's so many things that and I think it's going to come back out that a lot of these corporations and a lot of these companies said, yeah, we're for prison reform. We're going to support that. We're going to hire them. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Now let's start to make you accountable. And things are probably a little bit rougher now because a lot of people are out of jobs. A lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
COVID has actually changed the way we do a lot of different things now.
Have you been hearing anything of how COVID is affecting the prison system and like what's going on internally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, Malik Boyd, Heart of the City. I think it's tomorrow night. He's going to host something in regards to the COVID. It's real.
Mm,
Um, there's two significant things. Like a friend of mine, actually, he got COVID, based on, because you're working in a tight system. You're working in closed spaces. One of the things, one of the things that I actually did was, I took some retirees. I worked up at Fort Dix, but we actually went out there one day in our cars, man, and just, you know, I had probably 20 cars, man, before they came in, and we was just out there rooting them on, like, yo, we appreciate the job that you do.
mm,
And they respected that, because what they're doing is they're going into working in this an environment that is close quarters, so that the likelihood of them getting COVID is very likely.
mm,
A friend of mine ended up getting it. He rebounded from it, but now you got guys in sales. Remember what they were saying. That was my thing. What they were saying, like, they're releasing guys. They're releasing, because of COVID or COVID. Okay, but you released him. Did you test him before he got out? Do we know what's
Mm,
going on? What kind of resources are you giving to him? When he does get out,
mm,
um, But no, they're having serious problems. And I had another guy that actually caught COVID from working inside, and he put it on Facebook. And I think his baby tested positive,
wow.
and he made a statement like, "What kind of dad is that?" I was
Whoa.
like, "Whoa!"
Whoa.
But that's how he was feeling, though.
Mm,
Like he didn't take all the proper precautions to prevent and getting it. But how can you in that kind of environment?
right.
I mean, that's what it was all about, the close quarters. They were talking about, even in the beginning, like they wouldn't get masks inside.
Mm,
These guys were taking their t-shirts, and just like
going
certain
to,
people use it. Yeah,
yeah.
that was their only means of protection. And then when somebody does get COVID, just like when we had people that got TB and hepatitis, you had certain areas that you could send them to now. But if everybody is getting it, or the numbers are increases, where are you going to put them?
Mm,
You can't house them in certain areas. You can't. So they have to stay where they are. And then depending on the prison and the conditions, that makes it even worse.
I know earlier I wanted to ask a question, but we went into the COVID topic. But um, you said when you were first starting in the working in the prison system that the guys would try to pull you aside, like, "Hey, see, I don't know what your intentions are, but like X, Y, and Z is happening." What are some of them stories, or one of them things? Because I always think about our forgotten brothers that's in the system that have these stories, that have these things that's going on. Like, what were they trying to get the attention of the CEOs to let them know that what's happening within there to them?
You know what? And I go back. I always talk about my roots with Cincinnati. Growing up in the hood.
Mm,
Thank God for that. Some guys would hit you with, you know, eh, you know, prison is like being out here. Everything can be a game.
mm-hmm.
Guys can try to run game on it, and just like anything else, there's always the older guys that were incarcerated. Like one guy that was incarcerated. I don't know if you remember The Wire. Remember The Wire? Did you ever see
Mm-hmm.
The Wire?
Mm-hmm.
A guy named Melvin Williams,
Mm-hmm.
who The Wire was based on,
Okay.
because of what happened. He was one guy that pulled me to the side, so to speak, and showed me how to basically run my unit, or
Mm,
how to interact with guys. And you know what it boiled down to? It always boiled down to respect.
mm,
You respect me, I respect you. You know what I do when I come in here. But the stories that you heard were, um, some of the stories that a lot of stories that I heard was just a setup. What actually transpired in, whether, we talk about the snitch rules,
mm,
whether they told, or they didn't tell, whether they got a couple years for telling, or 12 years for not telling, based
mm.
on conspiracy of who you know. No, like they come and like, no, Reggie. Yeah, I know Reg, man, Reg. Well, we had Reg under investigation for the last 5 years, and we know you've been interacting with him. What do you know? I don't know nothing what Reg is doing
Right.
outside of that. But no, we know you know something. We found out. And the government, Uncle Sam, can put pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
He's the real deal. Um, but those are the kind of stories, and then of course you always heard those stories where the families get broken, or you see the mothers come in with their sons, and you see that departure.
Mm-hmm.
You see that departure where you see that young child wanting to see their dad, and can't see him. Or one of the things that I did, like I said, I process guys in and I process guys out. The simple fact that I would ask a guy, like, yo, what are you going to do when you get out? Some guys will say, yo, CO, I'm good, man. My family been down with me. Matter of fact, they got a limo waiting for me outside. They rented a limo. My girlfriend's in the car. Like, yo, I'm good. But then there was guys that you said, look, CO, ain't nobody here.
Mm,
Everybody that said they was down with me and they was gonna ride this out, and my girl, she gone, and I don't know what I'm going to go back to, or if I go back to that same situation or that same particular area, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Am I
mm,
gonna be strong enough not to get back into what I left?
mm,
Because I can't find the jobs, because the jobs are not out there, because the doors are being shut. And
mm.
one thing that we do, a system of survival, is how we built. A man is going to survive no matter, sometimes, no matter what the circumstances are.
Wherever you put him at, he gonna find a way to survive.
Adjust and adapt and overcome.
Hey, always bringing it back. One of the final questions I asked too. Hey, you actually just brought it up, and I wanted to get your perspective on it. I'm a young man. You've been a young man. You've seen things, and that snitch rule and the mortality behind the snitch rule, and um, I'm still wrapping my head around the snitching and how it get boys caught up, or it's like if you snitch you get your freedom, but then you lose your morals almost, as far as like within the community. um and then it's a whole underlying conversation around it, like what's the right type of snitching and what's the wrong. I don't know. I'm man
Hmm.
enough to say I don't know. I've never been put in that position to know. You can say what you want until that time comes and the numbers come in front of you, what you would do. But I know this is a mental health show, and I know a lot of young men face some barriers. What would you say about just the whole snitch culture around snitching and things like that?
I mean, it's always easy to say, don't be in that position.
Mm,
Don't put yourself in that position. But when you get involved in, those kind of situations, uh, knowing that those consequences, you got to look for the deterrent, knowing that whatever situation that you get in that's unlawful per se, that
mm,
there's consequences. And this goes for anything. Are we actually prepared for those consequences?
mm,
So when you in those unlawful situations, you got to think about what are the consequences, or like real talk, do you really care?
mm,
Because you're living out the moment. You know what I mean? Everything is cool into the moment. Whether you're
mm,
making money, everything is good into the moment. The moment you get caught, or the moment where the adversity comes and you're forced to make a decision. And then that decision is based on family. That decision is based on your livelihood. And that's honestly only a real man can answer that, based on the consequences from the initial start of why he got himself into that situation that bared those consequences.
mm,
You know what I mean? Um, of course, me working is always easy. It's easy to say, yo, you, but how heavy are you involved?
mm,
If you do tell, is that your life?
mm,
Is that your wife's life? Are they going to shoot your son? Depending on what you're in, um, and that's why it is so important what we do. So
mm,
important that people that we're affiliated with to continue to set the example, that we've been through some circumstances, but we didn't actually fall victim to the system, or we made a way out.
mm,
You know what I mean? Or we continue to talk. I can tell you about my experiences because I don't want you to go through it.
mm,
Or I can tell you about certain things that I know of because I want you to follow the instructions.
mm.
The instructions are given. It's up to you whether you want to follow them or not. But that's what we got to do. That's what we do. With Black Men Heal. That's what we
That
do. Whatever environment that we in.
that's the natural transition into Black Man Hill. So, of course, I got to talk about BMH. We got the hoodie on. We do the King's Corner every Sunday at 7 p.m. And so you talked a little bit about it, like you got the phone call from Tank. He said, "Hey, I think you should, join this organization or whatever." You was as a board member, you reached out, you got that phone call with Taz. Now bring me up to that point. because we joined around the same time basically anyway. And um how, like, what was the natural transition from, because you're still doing synergy reform, but
Mhm.
COVID, of course, that is going on with that. um but you've been heavily involved with BMH, of course, as a Benai. How was that transition, like your experience been so far working with Black Men Hill?
Man, it's been so rewarding. Um, because even for me, I had a very strong spiritual side, and you know that. So, well, first of all, one is I wanted the therapy. Like,
Mhm.
I knew I was broken in so many different places. So broken in so many different places, and I'll say that because spiritually, I thought that was it, because I thought that would be enough for my healing process of everything that I've been through. And
Mhm.
spiritually, it can happen, but there's some other stuff. The way we think is what Black Men Heal did to me. When I started to talk to my therapist and started to talk those things out, and then he started getting me feedback and telling me, well, your mind is operating like this because of certain things based on your emotions and all, and I'm like, yo, this is deep.
Mhm.
And then you already know. And then we talk about those that the thing that really got me was those 8 dimensions of wellness.
Let them know what them 8 dimensions of wellness is if they ain't
You,
familiar.
I got to get it right because I call it F Possie, and that's POSSIE.
Mm,
And that's the uh, F is financially, P is the physical, O is for occupationally, the S is for spiritually, the S is for socially, the I is for intellectually, the E is for environmentally, and the E is for emotionally.
mm,
those are the things that you don't have to be balanced in those areas, but part of your well-being is you have to, so to speak, touch in those areas. But and seeing a therapist, and with Black men, I actually was able to talk to a brother that looked like me.
mm, mhm,
Like, I heard about therapy, before, and certain things, but when you're able to talk to somebody that look like you, that gave me the sense that I can actually let my guards down and open up.
mhm.
Then just Black man, to relieve that stigma. I thought it was basically, I was thinking about Hollywood. Like you lay down and you tell them your problems. You know what I mean? And then, of course, what Black Men Hill was doing, they was doing it for free. So after I went through that transition of going through the therapies, I was like, yo, if if I got so much out of this, and you want me to be a part of the team, I'm all in, and to be
Mhm.
able to tell them about my experience, and then able to be an example. Um, it was no question about what I was going to do, and that's why we're here.
Tell them about King's Corner and the experience been about King's Corner.
Ah man, now King's Corner is that virtual free space. Black Men Heal. We came up with, so many men were registering for the free therapy. Like we had to come up with something because men were interested. So we came up with the King's Corner. Came up with hosting something on every Sunday at 7 p.m. just for to invite these guys into this virtual free space. Coming up with certain therapists or special guests to host King's Corner to kind of facilitate it, just to open up the discussion with guys. Then we start getting, we started together, and we're getting guys calling in from all around the world. We talking about certain stuff, but they were comfortable enough to trust us in this process to say what was on their mind, to say what was on their heart. Um, and us being per se the facilitators of it, we learn something every time. I
Mhm.
mean, like, every time we do it, I'm learning something. Every time, I mean, like I said, things that stuck with me. And I go back to what Wayne said. You know, we so busy trying to make a living instead of trying to make a life.
Mm-hmm.
Like that registered, because that's all I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like real talk. I mean, unfortunately, I'm graced enough to be retired and I'm doing, but so I made my living. So now I'm really concentrating on really trying to make a life. And for me to make a life and where I'm from and what my mother raised me, how she raised me was a person to always give back, always to show love, always to extend the right hand of friendship or fellowship, as they say within the church. So I mean, King's Corner has actually brought that. I mean, we're doing it virtually, but we're actually reaching out to people all around the world, and we're trying to bring subjects or conversations or the things that we do as far as the topic, as far as what they want to hear. Just like we are hosting this Saturday, and we came up with who we are and what we're going to do, the new me. But
Mm-hmm.
we got to test the situation that just happened,
Yeah.
and we're able to do that. We able to go back, we able to adapt, adjust, and overcome. So we go back and talk about those certain things because this is going to be a part of how we start our year off. You know.
No, that's so true. And I don't know when this will come out. It'll be out soon, but King's Corner is 7 p.m. every Sunday at Eastern. I always forget to say Eastern because we tell them 7 p.m., but we assume everybody on Eastern. That's that East Coast bias.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
So I'll end off with what's next for synergy reform. Like that was moving heavy for you. That's what you were into. What are the next phases of synergy reform and how you plan to impact certain places and certain people with it, your mission and
Y-
movement?
yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff kind of going on right now, like behind the scenes. Still collaborating with Sue Ellen Island with reinventing reentry. So still collaborating with her and probably doing something virtual in regards to that. Working with some individuals working on the criminal justice reform. I don't want to speak too soon because it's still in the working. Senate reform, even working with trying to come up with something with Black Men Heal, trying to do something on how that works inside and outside of prison, maybe based on when they're released. So a lot of things going on. I got a couple of videos, just like just like what you're doing. I got videos that I made a while ago. Of course, I was thinking about the edits or what. Now, yeah, I ain't even worried about the edits. I'm gonna just post them joints and just let them do what they do. I may go back to I was doing one thing when COVID hit. I started doing like you were doing. I started doing somewhat like the podcast every week. So I may kick that back up. Maybe not every week, maybe once a month, or however it moves me. I mean, that's the thing about doing things virtually is you do it when you want to, but the
Mm,
success comes from being consistent and being disciplined and doing it on a routine basis. That's where the success,
mm.
because you start with something small, but then it evolves to something big. One of the things that uh, I heard somebody say is, small thing to a giant.
Nah, it's true. That's true. And like you said, just doing the little increments. That's I got the book with me. It's the Atomic Habits, and they
Okay.
talk about them small habits and how they matter up into one big full cycle. So you so right about that. Just doing the small, and it helps you with mentally too, like just doing like just one thing. Because I had to go back to like you said with the editing of the podcast, like, oh, I need the right mic, I need to do all of this stuff. And after a while I was like, man, just get back on the camera and start doing your thing. Like as
Yeah.
long as the story and everything is good and the message and the purpose is in well intentions,
Yeah.
people will follow and mess with it.
Yeah. It's too many people, man. I mean, we got
Hmm.
millions and millions and millions of people. So
Hmm.
I guarantee you. I mean, as you impacted me, I know you're going to impact somebody else, brother.
No, I appreciate that. I think I had one more question, but it's slipping me at the moment. It well, I'll end off with this. You're in a elder statesman position where you live life a little bit, a lot of bit, and you're able to, and when I say lived, I don't even mean age wise, I mean experience wise, where you've been
Mm.
through the ups and downs and different trials and tribulations. What would you tell that 72-year-old inexperienced father to be about life if you can go back and put some information into them?
You know what? It's funny that you say that because even for really Black Men Heal really made me accountable as far as being that spokesman, that elder, where I really it really started to sink in based on age and experience. You know, but for a young father out there, um, definitely got to have somebody to keep him accountable. Or if he even doesn't have that, that make sure he's listening. You know, like we say, listening to wise counsel, because there's going to be a lot of different things that's thrown at him. There's going to be a lot of pressures. Uh, one, I believe in me, who I believe in God, but you got to know your source. You got to be able to go back and understand your source and pray. Get on your knees and pray and ask for things that you're looking for. Um, but you just got to be able to listen. Be able to listen to people that you trust. Um, and that keeps you well rounded. And like today, there's so much that we have access to. Like we have access and information that I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at a you know, we can get it within minutes, but not all this access is true. That's why you got to be careful in who you're listening to. So people, you gotta have somebody that's going to hold you accountable. You got to have somebody that's going to feed you the truth, and you got to learn how honestly just to walk it out. We have a tendency to put so much pressure on ourselves for whatever we do, and with those pressure brings a reaction. Sometimes those reactions can be hastily. Sometimes those reaction can be done with anger and all that. We got to be able to walk it out, man. Be able to, they said you got to be able to crawl before you walk. But first, we got to learn how to get up. You understand what I'm saying? You got
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to pick yourself up and take your time and start to crawl, start to walk, start to run. But it's got to be done at a pace that you can control, and don't let other people, other facts control you. So that's all I got, man.
Nah, that's a great way to end it up. I'll link up all the information for synergy reform. With his personal I was gonna say personal email, his personal Instagram and social media pages, so you'll be able to follow him and keep up with what's going on. And remember that this platform has never been about a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, share, do all that good stuff to help podcasts succeed.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming on, D. Reed.